Hello there, ladies and gentlemen, to the second Bones episode of the Bootu Boys. I'm your host, Van Lee, and we're going to Bones talk today. Just Bones. I'm once again here with Brian Bones. Let's go with the last names.
I like this change.
It's better.
It is better. And Spencer Bones.
I've always wanted to be called that. Thank you.
You're the Bones twins, is what you are. I've been calling you that for 15 years.
And now there's a reason for it.
The whole 15 years that Bones Boys has a better ring.
With a Z, right? Are we talking Z's at the end?
I would hope so, unless
yeah.
it's B-O-I-S.
Please.
Well, we are talking Bones the Show on today's episode, and that is the show starring Emily Deschanel and David Boreanaz and all the cool cats of the Bones cast. And we discussed a season 2 episode last week. Well, this week we're just jumping ahead to 8 years to season 10. We're covering episode 15, The Eye in the Sky.
Yes.
Which might be a tad misleading, but it does
It's not,
fit
I think
in the show.
Both titles, that I think R.L. Stein did the titles.
Yeah, way off what
Just
we actually get.
Wrote down the title and then made an episode about something.
And last week ended up being super long. So let's just dive right into this.
I got one thing.
Okay.
I got one little preface, which is we're going to be talking about some of the differences between the show from season 2 and season 10, since the show ran for 57 years. And one of them right off the bat that you may have guessed is that when we last saw these characters...
It's jarring.
Yeah. Emily Deschanel was 30. Here she's 38. And David Boreanaz was 37. And now he's 45. So that's both a large chunk of time and also a large chunk of time when people start to look older. I know from personal experience right now. So if we comment on the appearances of these characters, it's done with love, out of our own, just absolutely like horror at our own aging.
Speak for yourself. Mine's done with rage.
That's actually a good thing to remember for this podcast. Van,
in general, yeah,
operates with rage.
It fuels me. I do want to put a note out here because when I was searching for this episode, somehow I had clicked onto the movie The Eye in the Sky, which stars Helen Mirren, Aaron Paul, and Alan Rickman. And for about 10 seconds, my brain was like, wait, Helen Mirren was in this?
Alan Rickman?
Wow. And then everything clicked and I went, oh, two different things. So let's discuss some of the changes that have happened since season 2 up to now. I mentioned a few of these on last week's episode, but maybe I'll go a little more in depth this time. Since our first episode back in season 2, Zach has been revealed to have become the apprentice to the Gormagon, a season-long villain serial killer who ate his victims.
God, it is a bummer when you lose one of your friends to the Gormagon.
To the Gormagon. And one fact about the Gormagon, he replaced his own teeth
with
the incisors from his victims.
Cool.
Yeah.
Every part of the buffalo.
He was part of the ancient secret society of the same name. Zach blew off his own hands because he didn't want to get Hodgins hurt. So he then went on to a mental institution after he was guilty and all that. It was then revealed that he never actually killed anyone, despite saying so. So technically, he could have had a lesser sentence. However, he told Dr. Sweets, his psychotherapist, that...
And not candy. He's not candy.
He's not delicious candy at all. He is Freaks and Geeks candy. Eye candy, that is. Zach told him that, look, there's doctor-patient confidentiality, so you can't tell people that you know I didn't kill that guy. Because in Zach's mind, he's very literal. He killed him by pushing the narrative forward or making things happen. He didn't stab him in the heart. So we didn't technically kill him.
It's kind of like how blood is on our hands for how there's homeless people and we're not.
Yeah, that's actually...
Like, we didn't...
Very prescient.
Like, we're not doing anything to anyone, but there's a way you could feel guilt. And with the way that Zach operates, I can see how that would work. I don't know how he got so wrapped up with the Gormagon. The Gormagon, though...
I'll tell you.
He's a nice guy. He'll buy you a drink.
The Gormagon used logic, and I couldn't tell you what that logic may be, but he apparently convinced Zach
the mixing software.
What you have to do is it's kind of like this like Thanos mentality of snap and eliminate 50% of the people will be better for everyone. It was like that. Oh,
okay. So he appealed to that rational side of Zach, the cold rational side.
But what happened after that is, after we find out Zach is the Gormagon's apprentice, he's in the hospital with his hands blown off. Bones comes up to him and argues with him logically. And the idea was that one life is not worth more than, a million lives or whatever it may be. So Bones said, if that's true, why did you get Hodgins out of the way and blow up your own hands? Hodgins isn't more important than anyone else. Why would you do that? Because otherwise you could continue doing your work.
And then she said, gotcha.
And he cried a little and he was like, your logic is irrefutable. Yeah.
And then he did the Vulcan sign.
A couple seasons later, season 12, the final one, exactly everything I was talking about as far as getting a lesser sentence happens. And it turns out Zach only has 13 months remaining on his sentence by the end of the series.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Now, since his character no longer works at the Jeffersonian, in the years since the show, and of course within the show, they decided to have a rotating cast slot for different interns. Each of them were quirky and weird in their own regard. On this episode, we have actress Laura Spencer as Jessica Warren, who is a little bit insufferable, a little too positive. She lives in a co-op. She's a cute little redhead who's just annoying.
I was going to ask you if that was coded for cult or something.
A little bit.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Now, both Hodgins and Angela and Booth and Bones are now couples. Booth and Bones have had a child so far, and there's more on that later. From then to here, we were also introduced to quite possibly the only somewhat likable character on the show, except for, I guess, Cam. Cam is sometimes a little bit likable, but it's a guy named Dr. Lance Sweets. I mentioned him earlier. He was a psychologist assigned to Bones and Booth to determine whether or not they were good partners, and if they weren't, the FBI was going to disband the team, but Sweets eventually found them great together, so blah, blah, blah. Sweets was so popular as a character, they made him a series regular. Then when the actor asked for a few months off to direct and write his first feature film, they instead just killed him off. So we do not get Sweets in this episode either, but we do get his replacement, essentially. That leads me to the addition of John Boyd to the cast as James Aubrey, a junior FBI field agent partner of Seeley Booth. Of course, Booth. He eventually becomes a full member of the Jeffersonian team, and there's something about him that is very off-putting to me personally. He's like human adjacent. It triggers a big uncanny valley response anytime I see the guy. It really is, yeah. And honestly, to me, he looks like what would happen if French Stewart was a little less of a fucking creep.
He's got a little French Stewart face.
A little bit, the hair in particular in the face.
A little Zach Braff face.
Like, French Stewart is so damn weird, I'm not offended by him. Like, I don't like French Stewart, but I'm like, okay, I understand what that is.
Looks a little like this other guy who I always kind of think is French Stewart, an actor whose name I can't remember.
Great.
Obviously, because I always think he's French Stewart.
Helpful.
I'll get back to you guys one day.
Yeah, let us know in a few years. We'll figure it out. This guy, however, this John Boyd actor as James Aubrey, it's kind of like The Thing from John Carpenter's The Thing, masquerading as a human being.
Yeah,
it's
I could
just
see
not
that.
quite there.
Yeah, with a way worse soundtrack.
I didn't like him, that's for sure.
And apparently the character of James Aubrey has a blood sugar disorder on the show, so he eats a lot of food and remains pretty small because he's tiny. And as such, he has the ability to tell subtle differences in food that others might not. And evidently, this comes up multiple times on the show.
Because everybody's got to be a goddamn superhero.
What a stupid quirk.
So there you go. Those are the changes from there to here. So let's get into this episode. Once again, Season 10, Episode 15, The Eye in the Sky. Our episode begins with our hero couple getting ready for work in the morning, and it turns out Bones is in the toilet taking a pregnancy test to determine whether or not she is pregnant. Booth is concerned and offers to help Bones pee on the stick, but Bones calms him down.
He's got a lot of smart suggestions in this scene.
Bones calms him down and says the tests are easy and reliable, so take it easy. After finishing the peeing on the stick, she exits the bathroom, and I can tell you, without a shadow of doubt in my mind, that peeing on the stick was not required to determine whether or not Bones was pregnant, because the normally 85-pound Emily Deschanel is a staggering 4 times her actual size.
Was she pregnant in real life?
Yes.
Okay.
What tipped me off was she was pregnant.
Now, this, again, is not a critique of her gaining weight or any of that. My critique here, it's scathing, is that the producers and writers of Bones thought we were so fucking stupid.
Write it in earlier.
That we could believe that she didn't know she was pregnant. That we could believe that Emily Deschanel, who by this point, her 10 seasons has been 85 pounds, was not pregnant here. She was just fat.
See, I thought maybe it was like a gradual weight gain or something. I had no idea.
Oh, no.
But then, we found out her boobs were sore, and that's a big giveaway.
I'm also, by the way, not certain the costume designers decided to give her a new wardrobe because she's wearing a blazer intended for someone 4 times smaller than her.
Well,
She does
that's what I'm
look very
saying.
awkward.
They're
in
not
it.
spending money on that shit.
No,
Fuck
not
that.
at all. As the two wait for the pregnancy test results, Booth receives a phone call, which he reveals to Bones involves a new case where a body was discovered in an industrial shredder. The two bicker and argue about Bones doing Bones things and continue to pretend that she might not be pregnant. And Booth excitedly talks about home restructuring when Bones sees that the test reveals a shocking result. She's not obese. She's pregnant. This causes Booth to somersault around the room and talk to the mostly fully developed fetus deep within Bones' belly.
Yeah. Now, do you have anything else you'd like to say about this scene?
Go for it.
Okay, for some reason, the writers are like, the audience needs to know these two fuck a lot.
Oh,
and
God.
it's right here where they talk about how they don't even know where it happened, and Booth's like, I think this must have been the kitchen floor night. And Bones is like, who even knows?
With as much sex as we have been having lately.
Yeah, we have had so many sexual intercourse.
We've had so many sex.
It could have happened any of the times that we sex.
So I can't help but wonder though, if this wasn't a gradual thing, did they just let her be pregnant for like 15 episodes of the
That's
season?
what I hope
And
is
then-
the whole
Yes.
time. That
And then they drop it in at this point when she looks like she's looked for a while now.
And I like to believe that in canon for the show, but not on screen, that like Angela and Cam are like having a conversation like, you gotta ask her.
And I'm really glad you brought up the whole sex thing. I meant to do a whole part on it, but I forgot to. What I will
did
say,
not feel like part of the show. It was weird.
What I will say is because Bones is so literal minded and all that,
Yeah.
she's very open about her sexuality. And there are episodes where she's just fucking around with people and she's like, why? It's a physical response, which is
Yeah.
the right thing to do.
Hell yeah,
but
Bones.
it's jarring to see sometimes.
So those wild bones.
Well, back at the Jeffersonian, Cam is looking for Hodgins, who is in his lab, and just before she steps through the door to talk to him, he bursts through, grabbing her and taking her away from the room, which is now sounding an alarm and dropping safety doors because of some spilled chemicals or explosions or something.
From the start of this episode to now still, it's whimsical fart music.
Yes. The whole time.
The whole
It didn't stop.
time.
It
Oh,
didn't
that's
break up
silly.
at all.
What's his name?
Hodgins.
Hodgkins.
Hodgins tells Cam he needs some new beakers and shit, and Cam gets a little concerned because they cost a lot of money, and Hodgins has a history of doing personal experiments at work, which Cam tells him the museum/crime lab/corpse repository is not going to pay for.
That's somehow like the B plot of this episode.
Well, this becomes an important piece of info for a storyline going forward, so I'll touch on that more as we bring it up.
Great.
After berating him, Cam tells Hodgins that they need to go dig up a body out of an industrial shredder and to put on his good body digging pants. At the crime scene of the industrial shredder, we find the team digging through some pieces of shredded garbage, finding chunks of bone and skin and blood and all kinds of gross stuff. And my favorite image of all of this is we get Jessica, again the intern, little redheaded girl, holding a big old bloody bone and using a magnifying glass to just study it up close and personal.
Like scientists do.
Booth arrives at the scene and he has coffee for everyone. He's being overly positive, like obnoxiously positive. Obviously, he's thrilled that his wife isn't fat. That's what's happening here for sure.
It's just this scene is ridiculous, and he comes in again really conveniently after everyone went around in a circle and shared a science fact they knew.
Yes, yes. Booth continues to be super nice to everyone that he would usually be a nasty prick to because he is nothing but a nasty prick.
Mm-hmm.
He even goes so far to say as, look at Bug Boy go, and you crack me up, Bug Boy, referring to Hodgins.
And Hodgins really does just roll with all these punches, all these verbal punches.
You know he's rich?
I've heard that, but it's also possible because if he charged at David Boreanaz, he would just deflect off him.
Do you know that corpse that they're digging up that's just mutilated because it went through an industrial shredder?
That's what he looked like.
That would be Hodgins if he touched David Boreanaz for sure. Side note, Hodgins actually is not wealthy at this point.
No, I was wondering why he cared that the beakers that he broke came out of his paycheck. It was like, what, you can just pay for that.
Yeah, no, he lost his fortune because something happened with the company or whatever. More on that as we continue.
Probably the Gormagon stole it.
It's the stupidest fucking name, too, the Gormagon.
I really like
It's hard to
saying
listen to without laughing.
Mhm.
Yeah, probably Ganondorf took it.
Now, while discussing the victim, the crew talks about how difficult it will be to identify the victim because of how mulched up he is, but Hodgins discovers something that might make the process a little bit easier.
No chin, no cheeks, no brow. Angela will have a hard time IDing him.
I think I found something that'll help Angie recreate the victim's face. What's that? The victim's face.
And here we're treated with what I guess the show is trying to say is literally the victim's face, cleanly ripped off and plastered to the inside of the shredder, eyeballs and all.
Yeah, it's like a kid playing with Play-Doh on something that's spiky.
Now, cue a bunch of dumb shit noises in green tint, and we've got the Bones intro again, and it's mostly the same thing.
Pretty much unchanged.
There were a few minor changes, some overlays from recent years, but ultimately it is still the same dumbass thing. The length is the same, the sounds are the same. They just took the old video and put a picture of Bones now on it, and that's it. That's all.
It has not been modernized, and it was already like outdated.
Maybe now it's retro.
Yeah, that's true. Maybe it aged out that long.
Returning from the intro, we find Angela carrying around the victim's skull, to which she's filled in missing bone pieces with clay.
And is very excited about it.
Now, what was Cam working on, you ask?
What was Cam working on?
Why, it's the victim's face, which they've scraped off the shredder wall, and she has pieced back together like some terrifying, nightmarish hellscape human.
All of this, again, is like what a kid would think people in a forensic lab do.
Yes. They plop the face that has been sewn back together right down onto that skull, and we're led to believe that this is absolutely what our victim looks like. Evidently, the next step is for Angela to scan the face into the computer.
The online database.
And therefore, they will know who the victim is, provided that he's been reported missing.
An online database that's able to gather nicknames.
Phone database. Oh, and more, all
it
sorts
finds
of
anything, yeah. Got their job history.
Meanwhile, Bones is reviewing the bones using her bone power, and she sees evidence of Schmorl's nodes on his bones.
Of course.
Which, you know what? You don't fucking know what Schmorl's nodes are, listener. Fuck you. I'm not even going to tell you. Well, the intern describes what Schmorl's nodes are to Cam because Cam's fucking stupid and doesn't know what Schmorl's nodes are. And when she gets it right, Bones tells her, hey, you did a great job, and encourages her, which puts everyone on alert because Bones simply does not do that, especially when all someone does is explain Schmorl's nodes to a bunch of fucking idiots.
Who haven't even bothered to learn what Schmorl's nodes
Was.
The group pieces together that thanks to the Schmorl's nodes and that Hodgins found cardboard remnants from the victim's shirt, especially under the arms, the victim must have worked for a moving company. Bones is continuing to congratulate everyone on figuring this out, and Angela asks Bones if she has a minute to chat. She's like, hey, Bones, we go
let's
talk.
Step aside from my PlayStation 2 Criminal Hunter game, and let's have a little talk.
Angela coerces Bones to give her a hug, and when Bones says, ouch, because of her boobs being squished, Angela reveals this is all part of her master plan and says, I knew it, your boobs are sore, and you're in a good mood. Clearly, you're pregnant.
Yep, that's the two things you need to determine if pregnancy is in effect.
As the first voice of reason so far on the show, Angela says, come on, don't try that I'm eating too much junk food bullshit with me. You're obviously not just fat. Bones gives up the ghost and asks Angela to keep it to herself for the time being, because she doesn't want to tell everyone. Her and Booth, they want to keep it to themselves and enjoy her being pregnant.
It's also pretty great how they still call each other Booth and Bones after years of marriage.
Very formal.
That is, at the beginning, it's really funny too when they're clearly living their married couple life. It's their house, whimsical fart music's playing. She's in the bathroom and he's just casually like, Bones?
Bones? Honey Bones?
Bones, could you get the laundry out of the...
Meanwhile, behind Angela and Bones this whole time, the floor-to-ceiling super hologram computer in Angela's office is comparing the rebuilt face to the internet to try and find a match. The computer narrows it down to 12 people across the whole world.
It's a hell of a job.
It's a good computer.
Yeah.
So Bones asks Angela in her trademark terrible acting voice, where she doesn't even remember a whole sentence at a time, can you perform a vocational search to see if any of them worked as a mover over delivery man? And of course the Angelatron can do that.
Yeah.
So with the tap of one button.
She really needs to get in touch with Microsoft or Apple or something.
Yeah.
With one tap of the button, it narrows down the search to Jeff Dover of Oz Storage.
And they've got their victim just that easy.
Mm-hmm. Armed with this knowledge, FBI agent and skinwalker James Aubrey heads to Oz Storage and Moving and meets with the supervisor who reveals to Aubrey Jeff Dover recently got into a huge fight with a fellow mover, Dustin West. Aubrey gets the location of Dustin West and heads off.
Also, when Aubrey shows up first and asks about Jeff Dover, the boss is like, he didn't show up for work today. And then Aubrey gets to go, well, he's been murdered. And the boss changes tone. But this actually reminds me of a story I need to tell you guys.
Okay.
That happened to me personally today.
Oh.
Yeah. So I go
Fresh.
on my way here. It was a little bit before. I decided, hey, you know what? I like to get a little caffeine in my system before recording the podcast. I've been good. I haven't had an energy drink all week because I'm trying to not drink those things. And I stop by Come and Go. I grab an energy drink. I go up to the counter. And the woman checking me out just casually says, sorry. And again, there wasn't a line I was waiting in. There's me and another older gentleman behind me. Just sorry. And she's acting very harried. The guy that was supposed to be at work today, he just didn't show up, said he was sick. And then I just kind of paused and was like, oh, that's tough. And the guy behind me takes upon himself to go, you know, he might be sick. And I don't know why, but it was like my favorite thing I've ever seen happen.
Well, it's
fantastic.
true as well.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people are sick right now.
Yeah, it's we're kind of in the middle of a never-ending pandemic. And it was just kind of a funny statement that was pro-humanity, I think, from this older gentleman behind me.
Was he like agitated, or was he just being like helpful? Like,
I think it
really
was like
sick.
a mixture of like, why would she just go right to that during these times?
Well, maybe
and
she
being
knows
like,
a lot more about him than we do. Maybe he's an asshole who's always calling in. She should have given us more information.
You just never know. But even then, like if you called into your gas station job, you get a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, I mean, she should have just gone home. You should have been like Bridget or whatever her name was. You
Probably Bridget.
You should have been like, you don't have to work for Harry. You can just go home.
Yeah, you just got him. She'll be like, yeah, I hate Harry. I'm sick of him anyway. I'm tired of him being the Queen of England or whatever he is.
That is so much, though, the industrialization of the United States of if you're not working every second that you should be working or can be working, you're worthless.
And that like wage slave labor is a moral good.
You're
supposed to be here.
It's so stupid. Every single job that isn't, I don't know, super wealthy paying job is like, no, if you get sick, you should tough it out. Bullshit. Stay home from work.
Like, I bet Bones gets lots of paid days off.
I'm sure she does. Fucking Bones. It's her fault. It's her fault Harry didn't show up to work today. Bones gave Harry the Omicron variant. At the lab, the intern Jessica talks more about the victim's bone history and prods Hodgins about all the shit he breaks and puts an idea in his head about an unbreakable glass beaker, which to this point in history, no one has ever thought about.
I think...
except for Bones.
I'm going to verbatim read you my notes based on what you just said. I guess no one in history ever thought to try and make glass that would not break.
What a novel idea. Hodgins then gets an idea and runs off to break a bunch of stuff in front of his boss, which Cam just watches and lets him get away with for some reason. In the sound-treated two-way mirror interrogation room that this show makes liberal use of.
Yeah, they didn't turn a light on for anybody in there either. I don't know how they could see one another.
Probably don't have one. The FBI can't afford a light, but they can soundproof this room, that's for sure. We see Booth and Aubrey asking Dustin West, the guy who got into a fight with our victim, some questions. Dustin West is pretty standoffish, likely because Booth has instantly gone to being a dick mode, like he always does. The two poke and prod, and West admits that he was mad at the victim, Jeff Dover, because Dover owed him money. Turns out West was bankrolling Dover to play in some high-stakes poker games, and at a recent game, Dover hit it big, winning $29,000. I couldn't quite connect the dots of why then this Jeff West guy would be so pissed that he hit it big. Wouldn't he get paid back?
He would get the money back. I didn't understand that at all either. The only motive for this Dustin West guy would be as if he wanted all of the money and not to split it. But again, what the show does really wrong here, and all of these procedurals have to present you with a suspect you're supposed to first think it is, and the music instructs us we're supposed to think Dustin West is a real suspect. There was not a second, and not just because we're really early in the episode, there wasn't a second where I thought this guy was the killer.
Right.
I mean, he's just some like doofy goateed guy that's like, my friend's dead?
Yeah. Well, essentially, it just didn't quite, it wasn't executed well enough to really push what we thought was happening. You understand and you can believe what's going on, but it was just clunky at this point. Booth is now convinced Dover was killed for this money, So now the idea is Booth needs to get into this poker game because Booth is very manly and so American and so good at poker that he'll be able to see the murderer's tells and nab it.
Just like all good FBI agents.
And James Bond. James Bond also uses poker to do things.
Now, I'm not entirely privy to the Booth gambling addiction storyline, but I did ask Bones superfan Katie, my girlfriend, she's going to be so mad I said that, about all of this. And she told me that it was definitely a recurring plot line. Booth had to overcome this problem, and he did overcome it a few years prior. Booth and Bones meet with Booth's old bookie, who tells him he needs to get into that big game. Bones is a little bit cautious here and says, I really don't think this is a good idea. You're a recovering gambling addict.
Let me explain dopamine.
And then Booth, of course, yells at her saying, I'm a big boy American man who doesn't cry. I ain't come some kind of sissy. And since Bones always goes with the flow, she never argues what she thinks is right. She just drops the issue for now. The bookie agrees to get him into the game, and the scene fades.
I'd like to take a moment to just dwell on how absurd Booth's premise is here, that he will catch a murderer by going to a poker game that the murderer might not even be at. And how he'll do that
is by being good at poker.
But not even really. He'll watch the other players, and by the way they bluff at poker,
by being good at poker,
he'll be able to tell
who killed.
Because that would be the same way you would act. And it's just all just the most...
What's the disconnect here, Brian? This makes total sense to me.
I would have liked it better if the episode said, like, this is the one where Booth plays poker and just not told me any of that.
That's all it says. And it would be totally accurate. Yep. More accurate than the eye in the sky. That's for sure. All right. Bones and Jessica are looking over Bones and talking an awful lot about Bones when Jessica reveals a blunt force trauma spot on a bone, which Bones says isn't the murder weapon, or that injury was not actually related to the murder. That's clearly something that happened before, because obviously Bones knows about bones.
Oh, yeah.
Hodgins comes in to reveal something he found among the victim's remains, and it's a coin that they can't quite identify, but Bones knows what it is. It's a gambler's sobriety token. Turns out that Booth has one just like it, and I think it's at this opportunity, or this time in the series' run, that they actually change her name to Coins.
Oh, that's cool. And they make the S a $sign.
Booth is now in his office playing with that same coin.
And the C is a cent sign.
When Aubrey comes in and reveals that the victim's injuries that weren't related to the death were caused by a car crash in which his wife and kid died, Booth surmises that this must have been when he began playing poker as a coping mechanism to losing his family. Of course, he tried to stop doing this, but it was a big traumatic moment. He couldn't quite quit playing poker. Aubrey says this is exactly why you, Booth, should not be going to this poker game. And let me tell you, Booth does something exceptionally unexpected here. He gets real mad and tells Aubrey that he's going to do what he wants and it's a done deal, so shut up.
And Aubrey tries to tell him, like, look, man, it starts with one. A guy offers you to play one hand. It starts that simple. Next thing you know, you're out back in an alley playing solitaire by your goddamn self, and you're not an FBI agent anymore.
Booth does this thing when he's being told no, where he absolutely can't handle being told no. So he repeats what he wants and then looks down and pretends to be busy. So the other person has to walk away. So Aubrey does just this. Booth's just like, well, I'm going to play poker in that game.
And Aubrey's just trying to seriously be like, look, man, I know what you've been through. Like, I'm your partner. It's my job to help protect you. And Booth's like, real men can't have addiction.
Sealy Booth, more like seething Booth. Am I right?
For a guy named Sealy, he's not so posturepedic or whatever.
What's your sleep number? At the Jeffersonian, Hodgins is carrying around a chunk of person, and he runs into Jessica, who asks him...
Just very casually again.
And Jessica asks him about the unbreakable beaker thing again, and Hodgins says, hey, I've developed a coating that is based on beehives, and also, I'm not working on it at work, solely at home at night. Jessica points out a flaw in this coating in that you can't heat it like you need to do a glass beaker, and of course, Hodgins stutters and gets a little bit upset about it. Cam intercepts Hodgins, and the two barter body parts, with Cam getting a thigh and Hodgins getting a oily chunk of forearm.
That's kind of funny.
Yeah, sure.
As far as Bones goes.
It's about the limit of Bones humor, that's for sure. And this oily forearm might have a substance left on it by the murder victim, or murder weapon.
Yes.
On that note, let's go ahead and take a quick Bones break, and when we get back, Bones. Bones and Booth are now at home arguing about the poker game thing, and Booth at least decides...
Booth spends half the episode arguing with different people who love him about this need to play poker. By the way, it was I mentioned this when we weren't recording, but this show accidentally reveals its hand at how fucking batshit it is in the last scene with Aubrey and Booth, because Aubrey just casually says to Booth, "Look, man, in the last 3 months, you've been shot multiple times, you've been to prison, and you've had your best friend die in your arms." And it's like, wait, what?
That's trauma, right? You're traumatized by that. And Booth's like, "I'm a man. Man, don't do that."
Men don't experience trauma. They experience good hole cards.
I've never cried. So Booth and Bones are at home arguing about the poker game. Booth at this time at least decides to stop just shutting down and being mean about everything, and he moves on to being way too reassuring about everything. He's like, "Look, Bones, baby, come on. I got a good life here with you and our bone babies. I ain't gonna relapse because you're so good, baby Bones."
That's definitely how addiction works, too.
And then also this episode, when it's discussing Jeff Dover, the murder victim, and also Booth, it makes the assumption that for you to become a gambling addict, or for you to be an alcoholic, or for you to be anything, you have to have had a bad
trauma.
lot in life or something. That's just not true.
And then it goes away when things are good, is what he's trying to say. Which is, none of any of this is right at all.
Mm-hmm. All of this apparently eases Bones' hesitance, and we're off to the poker game.
Oh, what a poker game this is about to be, guys.
We now find ourselves deep into the world of underground, huge poker games.
Got some real edgy music playing.
AKA someone's basement where they're playing poker. A shit kicker soundtrack, as you said, Brian, begins. And to tell you the truth, I think that this song was so bland and so inoffensive that if I listened to it a billion times, I would not be able to learn a single lyric or beat from the thing and couldn't identify it to save my life.
Nope.
And that is essentially Welcome to the Bones soundtrack.
Yeah. And they sold soundtracks, I bet.
Oh, they absolutely did. There were like several that made money. Like they sold several. Ugh. All the while the song is playing, we're introduced to the poker gang, which include a myriad of weird fuckers. I will reveal them as we go along. Booth enters the game and sits down at the table, and his first hand in Texas Hold'em is ace-king suited.
Right off the bat.
Which shows how good Booth is at poker.
Yeah.
After Booth wins the hand, we're led to believe the night has continued with Booth winning nonstop since he's,
After
good
he wins
at poker.
every hand, he smiles in a way that you internally would want to be doing.
Yes. No, he's like shit kicker grin, too. We are next in the middle of a hand, and Booth does that thing that the most annoying fucker at the table does, which is blather on and on and on about the game in just the cockiest
I don't want to use
possible.
this term lightly, but as a person who played specifically for a few years, like a shitload of Texas Hold'em, I felt like PTSD from watching this.
Yeah.
Like somebody just wanting to hear the sound of their own voice be domineering.
There's
and
always
the way
someone
they
like
can
that.
do it is at a table of a bunch of math nerds, so they're like, "I'll do it."
Bitch then looks around and notices the dome camera on the roof, to which the guy running the game tells Booth, "Yeah, we had some questionable games, so now we got a eye in the sky."
He said it!
Oh, there it
The
is.
episode title. Wow, so clever.
Take a shot.
Booth continues pestering everyone to call his bet or not, and we are finally introduced to all of the cool cats around the
The
table.
only reason you wouldn't call my bet is if you're a scaredy cat. That's basically what he says.
Well, at the table we have Mustache Man, who looks like Zorro and folds his hand.
He's pretty cool.
ATM, who is a very stereotypical middle-aged man, and he folds his hand. Gold Digger, not to be confused with Grave Digger, who is the only woman at the table, and she also folds. Beanie Man, who, as you guessed it, has a beanie, who also folds. This means that Booth has won the hand, and he does what every excellent poker player does when they win a hand, thanks to everyone folding, and he reveals his cards showing who's bluffing the whole time.
And he's mad. He's mad they wouldn't call him pre-flop or whatever, and he's like, "I guess I'll just take this monster hand since you want." He raised before the flop, meaning no one had even paid to enter the hand, other than maybe 2 blinds or 1. So he's essentially made no money here, and he's like, "You guys really missed out."
Guys, Booth is really good at poker. And he's tough. He loves dogs.
He's a man. He's a man's
football,
man.
and America, and he served his goddamn country, made it safe for all those lib cucks out there to question Trump with their sissy boy attitudes.
And you better not question Crump either.
Anything in that wheelhouse.
Anyone with a name that's stupid.
Even close.
Yeah. If a man walks up to you and says his name is Robbie Dump, don't trust that guy either.
Like, get to the other side of the road. ATM is, of course, annoyed at all of this and says, I know who you are, new guy.
I love how they all have cute nicknames. I want to play in a poker
love
game
the introduction of people in shows and movies where it's like a crew, and that's how it always. This here's Slow Eye.
Like a spin doctor.
They
like
always
a heist movie. They do that.
They always have nicknames, and they always introduce each other one at a time and have a backstory for the nickname in these things, and it's just so.
And they all have a
real.
specialty usually in those movies. Like they're part of the team. It's the team assembly. I love those. Yeah. And this one, I also do love, just not maybe in as
sincere
earnest
of
a way.
fashion.
Yeah.
Over here, we got Chrome Dome, and that's Furball on the other side of the table. ATM is annoyed at all this and says, I know you are, new guy, to which Booth gets a little nervous, but then ATM says, you're the annoying piece of shit who won't shut the fuck up ever. And Booth is relieved, and his cover isn't blown, and the group starts revealing why they're named what they are.
Which everyone does.
ATM is called that because of how much he pays out. Because
he
sucks. He's bad at poker. He's so bad at poker, he probably doesn't reveal his hands when he wins and doesn't have to. That's how bad he is at it. We're introduced to Midlife, another guy here, as in midlife crisis because he got a divorce, bought a Corvette, and started dating a stripper. Mustache is actually named the cool as fuck name Johnny LaQuatra.
Yeah.
And he has a mustache.
I wish we got more about him.
Oh, yeah. Super cool. Gold Digger is called that because she got a huge settlement from her billionaire dad. And now we know all of the people have quirks and nicknames, so it's only fair Booth reveals his nickname, and he does just that, saying this little Jim.
Tell you what, they call me Freddie K, but hey, newbie, that is just fine. All right, look, I gotta go hit the head. Where's that located? Down there. Down there, thanks.
You guys ever hear that before?
Oh, yeah, I've heard it.
Hit
It's
the head?
Stupid. So stupid.
I wasn't sure that I'd ever heard it. What's that? How does that mean what it means?
I don't know. That's one of those that I
Punch
know
the tip
when
of
you
your penis?
use it. I don't know if the head is the toilet or the head of your dick, or I don't know. I just know of the phrase.
I've never heard hit the head. I mean, I've heard go to the head, I think. Use the head. Yeah, I don't know.
The head's getting used, I'll tell you that for sure. And also, I cannot think of a better shitty nickname for Booth than Freddie K.
What does it even mean?
Freddie but K.
So I guess probably
Freddy
Krueger?
Strikeout. Or Krueger, yes.
And this is
I'm Booth, and I'll kill you in your dreams.
I prefer to play in the middle of the night. Has anyone seen my striped shirt? Oh man, I stabbed through the cards again.
That is a nickname which implies that Booth himself gave himself the moniker. No one has ever actually called him that in his life, ever.
Yeah. What though? What if he's living through his fantasy because when he was really into gambling, he went by Freddie K?
Maybe that's his gambling.
Because he was
name.
like a degenerate gambler too. He was saying he'd bet on if ketchup was ketchup and
the cheese was expired.
Yeah.
I think he said. Yeah, exactly. Well, after making it to hit the head, it turns out Booth didn't at all need to hit the head, and instead he calls Angela for some reason, and that he reveals that there are 3 cameras in the ceiling, and he wants to get footage of the game the night Jeff Dover was murdered. Angela reveals there is absolutely a way to do it, that it's totally not at all bullshit, guys. It's real.
Just pair the device.
She says, hey.
As long as you've got the secret covert FBI app.
She says, hey, IP addresses, hacking, it's just a bunch of words. She throws some buzzwords around, and Booth has to get his phone close to the system. That'll do it. And by the way, I might point out that Booth's phone's like an iPhone 2, because it's kind of in that era.
He has upgraded from the Razr V3.
Yeah, I was going to say,
last
it's at least kind of in the proximity of a modern looking cell phone based on the first episode.
It has a touchscreen.
It's not a flip phone at all, yeah. Well, Booth says, I can do this. I'm going to head back out there. He does. A bit later, we see Booth and ATM fighting over a hand, and Booth claims ATM did something called a string bet, which I don't have a clue what it is. I actually put in my notes. One of you maybe knows.
I've never heard of it.
I have no clue.
A string bet, which no one would ever say someone did unless they were at a casino or they were dickwad.
And their name was Freddie K.
Yeah. Or it was a legitimate one. But the idea is if you're making a bet, raising or calling, all of your money needs to be going in at the same time. So the reason that exists is so you can't be like,
Oh, so you push one chip in.
And you can't just be like, ugh, and then throw more in when you realize what your hand is or whatever.
Okay.
It's basically just to make, like, that's done, your bet is done. So when this actually could be called out as one kind of a physical accident, or someone just not thinking, pushes one stack in, forgetting to do the other one, and then goes back for the other one.
Okay.
Which you can't do. But again, like, I was impressed that this show knew what that was.
Really?
That was one of the things that I was surprised about, because the show gets no detail about anything right.
Yeah, I guess that's true, particularly what we've said about the science stuff.
I've also, it's obscure enough that I feel like in a game like this where they all know each other, it would have probably never come up.
Sure. Okay, that's fair. Well, apparently, like you said, that's illegal, so Booth gets real snotty about it. ATM throws a hissy man fit about it, and the main guy whose house this is, which, by the way, Booth at one point refers to as Daddy. Yeah, kind of Scott Baio.
Yeah, he does call him Daddy. Why does he do that?
I don't know, but I'm calling him Daddy from here on out. I'll tell you that. Daddy tries to calm them down. Nobody puts Daddy in the corner. That's what that kind of sounded like to me. Booth suggests that they need to check the tape, and Daddy eventually relents.
They got him because they got that eye in the sky.
That's right. Several eyes in the sky. In the security room, Booth, ATM, and Daddy review the footage, and Booth continues to stall for time till Angela's magical connect-all computer device gets the appropriate IP address and then has the full signal at the Jeffersonian, where Angela and noted Jim Henson puppet creation Aubrey are watching. Aubrey asks if the feed is live, to which Angela says, yes, there's Booth, as if Aubrey did not have functioning eyes and could not recognize
he's playing in this poker game. That's the whole point of this.
Yes. It was just such a, like, I don't think she meant it that way, of course, but it was like, no, there's Booth. Like, it was so kind of snotty, said matter-of-factly, yeah.
You recognize the person you know.
Evidently, now they are interfaced, and they can download 72 hours worth of footage, which will give them access to the night Dover was killed. Meanwhile, it's revealed that ATM did not have a string bet, so Booth apologizes like an asshole, and ATM calls him a tool bag.
And says, bite me.
Yeah,
bite me, tool bag. Yes.
Oh, it's so great. It's so, again, like, these are high-stakes gamblers.
The best high-stakes gamblers.
And one of the people in their group murdered someone. And yes, that's what you get out of that tough crowd. Bite me.
Cam approaches Hodgins in the lab and finds his weird bee polymer thing, and he insists he worked on it solely at home, and it did not interfere with this case. Speaking of which, he's also identified a substance that was found on the victim. It's a palm oil that was used in cooking, which gives them some sort of lead, which is not remotely apparent yet.
The victim may have eaten
an entire palm tree. At Bones' house, she's waiting in their kitchen late at night, wearing her enormous child pajamas, and Booth comes in saying, hey, I'm surprised you're awake.
I didn't see Booth, I only saw Freddie K.
Bones wonders aloud why Booth is home so late, and Booth says, hey, I made some big progress on the case, and he slaps down a giant wad of cash. She finds this to be questionable at best, and he absolutely dismisses her concerns immediately in that shit way that he always does.
It's because he's a bad person.
Bones asks if Booth has spoken to his sponsor, and get this, he gets real snotty about it.
Like, extremely so.
And at one point he says, I don't even like this conversation.
And then starts off to his pregnant wife with, that's between me and my sponsor.
Booth is such a piece of shit.
He really is.
He argues to hell and back with Bones and is absurdly mean about all of it. Eventually, Bones says, I love you, and Booth relents, realizing he's being foolish about all of this. Just kidding, he continues being an asshole the whole time.
Yeah.
At the lab, Jessica reveals to Cam and the audience that she found evidence of blunt trauma, as well as deep scrape abrasions, meaning Jeff Dover was beaten and stabbed to death.
It started getting really graphic at this part. They're talking about all the different things that happened to him.
After most of this episode has been just stupid.
You dirtbag.
Yeah, exactly.
And then
we're talking about these gravely serious things.
So his ribs were caved in and punctured his lungs and heart.
And
his throat was torn out. It was like just kept going.
Coming off of a scene so fucking stupid that Bones and Booth are having an argument in which it ends with the camera just fixating on that lone wad of cash on the counter. Like any couple would just leave like $20,000 sitting in the middle of a counter. They also have a kid who could just grab it and throw it away.
Can you imagine being a kid and just stumbling across a fat wad of cash? One time I found $100 at Enterprise Park Lanes. while we were scorekeeping, and I kept the fuck out of that.
Yeah. And $100.
I don't feel bad about it at all.
No, you shouldn't.
Those bowlers suck.
$100 when you're 12 is
Actually,
$4
that
million.
sounds awesome now.
Yeah, it actually does. I probably bought a bunch of Pepsi and raw deal cards
at
with
the
it.
time, you think it can change your life.
Oh, yeah, and it did. Those raw deal cards were worth it. Meanwhile, Booth and Aubrey are reviewing the poker footage from the night Dover was killed. Turns out all of the people Booth played with were there, plus one other guy. Aubrey reveals that they are looking into each of them, so that's it. No reason to go back undercover.
No, you did your job. You extracted your information. You somehow made technology that doesn't exist come into play. Great job, Booth. Honestly, you acted like a dick, but you got it done, right?
Yeah, awesome. We
End
can
of the
move past
episode.
this. Yeah, episode over. No, except this time, instead of getting mad, Booth just pretends to go along with all of this and walks away. Aubrey follows him, telling him, hey, this is not a good situation to be in. You do not need to keep going back there. Aubrey tries to relate to Booth and tells him a story about his dad, who is addicted to the stock market, and Booth seems to finally get it.
This show's so weird.
Alf would know a little bit about that.
Booth said, Alf's son would know a little bit about that. Booth says, hey, look, I get it. I understand why you're upset, but I'm Booth. I'm all-American football man who isn't some pussy punk. All's well. Thanks, Aubrey. You're the best. Please leave me alone.
and Aubrey also, by the way, opens this by being like, I know you don't want to bother your wife with things because women just worry. Showing his own weird. And again, this is 2015.
Yeah, this is not like 1974. This is way too recent to have that misogynistic shit in there. Next up, using the tiny bit of seemingly realistic science that show tries to litter throughout the plot, Hodgins reveals that he found particulates on the victim, which when combined points towards a Thai restaurant nearby being a potential spot where the murder took place.
And that leads Cam to tell us, that is what it means. A murder could have taken place. Cam typically acquits herself fine.
Sure.
As an actress. It's not a Bones situation, but she reads it as, that might be where Jeff Dover was murdered.
Nailed it.
Pause in the middle of the sentence and then Jeff Dover, which is I love.
Seriously could not remember the name of the character for a little bit.
And they don't do second takes on the show.
That's what I think that's what it was. Is she was like, what's this stupid fucking name of this character?
I mean, I do it all the time when we're trying to reference a character in this, so I can see her doing that, being like, Jeff Dover, that's where he was murdered.
And you see there's aluminum plus a bunch of other stuff used in Thai food. The aluminum is not used in the food. I said that weird. It's an addition to all the Thai food stuff.
I was starting to regret all the times I've eaten Thai food.
I thought maybe you had an agenda against Thai cuisine. You're like, don't eat Thai food. It has aluminum in it.
I fucking love Thai food. It's so
delicious.
spicy. It's amazing.
I love Thai food too.
Well, this is the closest restaurant to the poker game, so this is a logical first place to look. Cam, Hodgins, and Jessica head out to check the restaurant. At the restaurant, the trio uncover blood, tissue, cartilage, etc., which then point towards a violent encounter between the victim and the murderer. Hodgins decides to test all the wood in the area since they believe that's what the murder weapon was made of. Turns out that the FBI cannot get a warrant to check on the poker guys, so Booth insists on going back to the game to keep it up and see if he can get more info.
It's so clumsy, too. He wants to play so bad.
And isn't hiding it remote.
No.
That's why everyone keeps pestering about it.
It's like a little kid that wants you to take him to, like, Toys R Us or whatever. I don't know what kids do.
Bones and Aubrey both say, no fucking way. You're not going back to that poker game, Booth. So there's no reason for this. You absolutely should not be there. But I would like to point out that Booth is an all-American, tall, white, football-loving man who has never once in his life been told no, and he simply cannot handle being told no. So God damn it, he's in the game.
And that's his plan is just, again, basically the same. He could have done this before.
Mm-hmm.
His plan is just to bring up the murder.
Yeah, I love how he's like, guys, you guys aren't making enough progress. I'm just going to have to go back and kind of talk about the murder.
I'm just going to go
I'll be able to tell. They're tells. Their tells are going to give it away.
I'm just going to have to go back and see how much money I can win. I mean, if I can catch the murderer this time.
I'm good at poker.
Do you guys know that I'm strong?
Booth agrees that if at any point that they get the info that they need and he's in the middle of the game, he'll just leave immediately.
What's the other option? That's the thing I was really confused about. Is he going to, like, first identify the murderer and arrest him and then continue to play?
I think so. I think that's the implication. And guess what? Almost happens.
Yeah.
And he basically agrees to all of that just so he can get these two off his back. Back at the next game, Booth is struggling to win and losing a lot of chips, All the while this is happening, Bones and Jessica are checking Bones, and Aubrey, Cam, and Angela are using the Angelatron to computer out some information that could help, in one case, financial records of players in the game. We get more and more poker shots where every single shot of Booth is with him having suited cards, because in case you guys forgot, he's good at poker.
They're only ever spades.
Yeah, that's true. They are.
Every single hand he gets is 2 spades. I did like the first hand here that he loses, because it is annoying. Like if it would, he gets queen 9, which he probably shouldn't be playing, but he plays it, gets 2 pair, and then loses because the guy with the shirt that's down too far, that's older, hits a straight on the river on the last card. So very tough thing to happen to Booth, but also like that particular hand, the way that they set it up made actual sense, because he didn't have like ace king, he didn't have what he'll have later.
Brian is fucking loving this poker stuff.
I figured that's what would happen, honestly, so I tried to gloss over that scene as much as I could.
Well, see, normally this is the only complaint.
It did actually seem like it was pretty realistic, honestly, but I knew I wasn't going to have to worry about the specifics of the scene.
I should reiterate, though, this isn't good. It's good for a poker scene in media.
Sure.
Because poker scenes in media are always...
right. It's
always 2 aces in every hand.
Poker scenes are IMDb reviews, where it's 0 stars or 5. Mm-hmm. Like, they think everything is that dramatic all the time, and it's not mostly
really,
just
a lot of poker is really boring, actually.
All of it is.
And it wouldn't work in a movie or a TV show because it would be very boring.
5 minutes out of every hour might be interesting. Might be.
Guys, Booth is good at poker.
Yeah, that's
You know what else I heard about that guy?
Hmm?
Really masculine, really tough.
At one point, Hodgins enters the Bones lab and tells Bones, the person, and Jessica that Booth is winning big at the game, but he still hasn't brought up the murder to see if anyone in the game would react.
And again, they act like, is he gonna? He doesn't have a choice. He's an FBI agent.
He's not sure, though.
Meanwhile, Bones finds some more wood particulates on a bone, which Hodgins then takes off to analyze. After reviewing the poker players, the crew learns Midlife has had major financial problems, and his house was about to be foreclosed on until a timely large deposit into his accounts just that morning.
I love that the Angelatron has his nickname Midlife in there.
Yes, it does. Like, they added that. They had to.
It's so great.
She's got a hell of a database.
The crew now believes that they have found their killer, but the problem is they have no evidence.
I know, and the other problem is they're going to have to get this information somehow to a guy who's playing in a high-stakes poker game that would never let you have a phone, let alone take it out at the table.
Don't be silly. He's so good at poker, he gets to have a phone.
They let him do it.
Yeah. Your skill rating determines whether or not you get phones or other devices. If you're really bad, you're only allowed a BlackBerry, and nobody has those.
I do love how they went to the trouble to install cameras in the thing, but they're like, you can have his phone.
It's so funny.
In this $20,000 poker game plus.
By the way, one time in a $10 game at someone's house, someone tried to ask me to put my phone away when I was checking baseball box scores because I wasn't playing in a hand, and I just said no. And it was like weird and quiet for a little bit, but it was fine.
I do feel like that is something you and Booth would have in common, because Booth would say no to someone who asked him that.
Well, the thing is, it's a $10 game.
Who cares?
And it was this guy who is sort of like Zach Addict's character, like very straightforward and stuff. Yeah, it was a weird, awkward moment.
Well, since they have no evidence, it's up to Booth to figure this one out on his own. Midlife finally has a couple of good hands, and Booth makes his move. He brings up Jeff Dover and, hey, any of you guys heard about what happened with your old bud, Jeff
really
Dover?
Really awkward. Yeah, there's not really a whole lot of subtlety in this line of questioning.
The problem here is that these are professional poker players, guys.
Yeah.
They are so good at it. Midlife and Gold Digger sure as fuck aren't revealing they know anything. They're not going to give up their tells.
No.
They're too good for that.
And they certainly wouldn't have really obvious glaring ones after being so experienced.
I like the idea of a really good poker player, like World Series poker player, who's like, I do have one problem. I do croak like a frog when I get a really good hand.
The deal's at ribbit.
But it's like, they're undisputedly awesome at poker, but they do have a very obvious tell sometimes. It just sometimes comes out.
It's just that if I think I'm ahead in a hand, I start singing Are You Jimmy Ray?
Anytime Furball over there gets a good hand, he starts dancing on the table.
Oh, by the way, the frog guy you mentioned, Spencer, guess what his poker nickname is? It's Croaky.
Meanwhile,
actually, Croaky should be Jeff Dover's nickname.
Meanwhile, in the lab, Hodgins discovers that the wood found on the bones is maple, and there's also pine tar. Let's hear what they have to say.
Maplewood. Oh my god.
What? Pine tar and maplewood. Was he murdered with a piece of furniture?
No, it's a baseball bat.
Guys, it turns out Darren Erstad is the murderer.
Oh, that's where he went.
I was going to say Barry Bonds.
It is nice that they had Booth just drop in casually that one of the players at the game is a baseball coach.
Yes.
Earlier, because he's trying to defend playing poker. He's like, these are good guys.
Yeah,
One's a
one guy
baseball
plays
coach.
baseball.
Salt of the earth murderers.
One guy for a long time led the league in batting average, 372 in the season. Next up, the crew finds a picture of Midlife holding a baseball bat on Facebook or whatever. And apparently this is all you need for a conviction. Done deal.
It makes you think, because I too have held baseball bats.
Have you murdered anyone, Brian?
I'm worried that I'll be convicted
Let's
for
put
it.
the evidence together here. Held baseball bats, eat Thai food, have played poker. You have committed murder for sure. It just lines up.
Get out.
Guys.
You're under arrest, Brian Vaughn.
Fuck. You guys are cops?
Yeah, duh.
You were Bones?
Bones then rushes off to send Booth the news.
That the murder was committed by use of Eastern Slammer, which is the name of the bat.
It absolutely is.
And totally named that because you can't say Easton.
No. Oh, man, there was one episode, I'll bring this up. Oh, the next episode, actually, I had a fun fact for you at the end of the show. I'll bring it up now. The next episode chronologically in the series involves Guy Fieri.
What?
Not him, but a Guy Fieri guy getting murdered. So part of finding all this out is that Drano or something like that was used, except they can't use the word Drano.
Right.
So there was Go-Gunk.
I like that name. Although you worried it gets confused with Gogurt and someone dies.
Probably both is disgusting. Actually, that's happened with Gogurt, I'm sure.
Someone
has died from ingesting.
Squirting that gunk tube into their mouth.
At the game, Booth is in balls deep, and he gets a text from Bones saying to bring Midlife in. But as the final card of the hand is dealt, Booth realizes he has 3 kings and most assuredly could win this hand.
And I am glad that while it's nuts that we see the pocket kings here now, at least it's not aces.
It's not a straight flush like it always is.
And he hit 3 of a kind, which does happen.
Sure.
And that's another one of the things too, is like Spencer mentioned James Bond playing poker. Well, Casino Royale, which is a really great movie, but it has one of the more improbable poker scenes ever filmed. I mean, like, everyone has a royal flush at once or something. I don't even know.
Whereas, like, in real life, the end of a big important hand might be like, I have ace high.
Yeah, I have ace high because we both had ace king
Yeah.
and we bet, but there was no ace or king.
Midlife goes all in on the hand and Booth hesitates. The crew watching on the hacked security system wonder, why isn't he stopping the game to bring in the murderer? And Angela says, he did have a hell of a hand. There's a lot of money on that table.
Angela gets it.
She gets it.
I wish the plot twist would be that Angela's also a degenerate gambler.
What if they all were?
Yeah,
like that's just something they had
in their
common.
spare time. It's just kind of what they all do.
I like this part. Bones is like kind of waffling in between defending him and then calling him an addict, like a filthy addict. And 2 seconds earlier, she's like, he knows what he's doing. He's an addict. Oh, God.
And this isn't a show with a gentle view of anyone with addiction either.
No, it's mean.
Not
about
a
all of
nuanced show about anything, but it seems like certainly about that. And also the music, the score, this show is playing this moment for tension of, will Booth finish the hand and have to quit his job at the FBI and lose his wife because he let a murderer go free? Or will he bring in the murderer?
I don't see why he can't get the money and arrest the guy. Why does he have to stop playing to arrest him? He should get the money. That hand can go ahead and be finished and then arrest Midlife.
Well, as Bones says, he's an addict.
With that exact amount of...
Yeah, you are as deserving as an enemy as anyone on the cast.
Well, everyone in the crew realizes the push to gamble is far too great. Booth won't be able to give this up. Booth spends at least 6 minutes internally debating that age-old poker question. Should I call or should I arrest this man for murder?
We've all been there.
With Bones and the crew looking on, Booth finally relents and does the right thing. He plops his badge on the table and says, Nate Crow, Midlife's real name, you're under arrest for murder.
Midlife is not really that upset about it. He's
No.
like, oh, man.
Nuts.
He seems a little disappointed.
I lost the ultimate hand.
With relief on their faces and a sad indie guitar song going in the background, everyone in the crew lets out a sigh of relief.
Another song that maybe was from 2006 or something, but some is in 2015 now.
I mean, which is worse? These kind of shit kicker songs or the 90 Day Fiancé made in 5 minute songs?
I am more offended by these shit kicker acoustic guitar songs just because I really like guitar music as much as I like anything that exists. So the worst version of that is more abhorrent.
So you think they're giving guitar a bad name in the process?
Yeah.
Well,
it's just like, I'd rather hear clips of bad electronic computer music because I'm never having to really consider that music anyway. I know that that's cast members who someone was like, here, just write your fake electronic songs, we'll slap your name on it and make a quick buck. I know that no one's purporting that to be of high esteem.
Well, I think to that point, I agree with you. I think these are worse because I fully believe that every song on Bones, someone sat down and spent weeks writing. I think someone put out time, effort, energy into those 90-day things. Were like, what can we fart out real quick?
Exactly. And that is more offensive to me in terms of like, you shouldn't use music that way, but also you shouldn't use it this way.
Yeah. Perhaps it's time for us to refresh our bones. So let's do that. And then when we get back, we'll have refreshed bones. Well, next up at a bar called Founding Fathers, Jessica arrives to find Hodgins and Angela, and Hodgins reveals to the girls that he's completed work on his unbreakable beaker.
Oh, thank God. I was worried the whole time we wouldn't get back to this plot.
Oh, well, we wrapped it up. Don't worry. The way he got around not being able to heat the thing is, instead of making the beaker unbreakable, he made a mat out of the material, so he made the floor soft. Surely no one has ever thought of this in their life, and he'll be a billionaire now, right? Well, truth be told, according to Katie, he does become uber rich because of this.
Oh.
So this is how he gets money back.
The only he's a billionaire twice. He starts the show as one, loses it, and then like becomes it again.
Yeah. What's the old adage about money like that? Is if you were born rich or you start rich, you'll never lose it.
Yeah, you'll just always have it one way or another because he's in a position to where he can get this, where he has the education.
I just heard it didn't grow on trees. That's all I was told about money.
Also in this scene, Hodgins is having this dinner with Angela, who is at this point his
wife, correct?
And with Jessica, the intern, who actually gave him the idea.
Yes.
And Hodgins is like, this is our idea, Angela.
Well, yes, it seems like that, but he actually does share with Jessica.
Good.
But I know what you're saying.
In that scene, I was like, Hodgins, you dirty dog.
Yeah, exactly. I thought the same thing, but no, in truth, in the future, he does.
Hodgins does the right thing.
Yeah. And he drops a wine glass on this mat to show that it does work. The other two realize how great the product is. They're like, oh, this is good. Angela says, you're going to make the Jeffersonian a ton of money. Except Hodgins points out that Cam did not want this done on work time. So as you said, Brian, he says, this doesn't belong to the Jeffersonian. It belongs to us.
Yeah. But also the people and all of us who don't want our glasses to break.
Or beakers.
Yeah. When I'm playing with my beakers, I like to know they're safe and sound when I accidentally punt them 3 times a day or however often Hodgins does it.
Back at Booth and Bones' house, Booth is making dinner for Bones, and since she's pregger now, she's having some crazy cravings, and she asks for ketchup with her food. Wow!
Earlier, she wanted pickles. I feel like they Googled pregnancy food.
And it's clear that everything is now back to normal at the Bone house. There's a whole bit with Bones and Booth revealing to their daughter that she's going to be a big sister. Everything is good.
It is, isn't it?
What's all's well's ends well, or whatever.
Nailed it. Booth's phone rings and he tells Bones, hey, this is my sponsor, my gambling addict sponsor.
I better get this. And you can understand because he's been through what for an addict would be a lot in order to get his man.
That'd definitely be triggering you.
Yeah, big breakthrough in the fight against his gambling addiction. He's going to tell his sponsor all the good news. Bones takes care of their daughter and Booth heads to the other room and answers the phone. Booth, of course, answers it, and let's just listen in to hear what he has to say.
Hey. Yeah, thanks so much for getting back to me. I appreciate it. Oh, the case was great. Yeah, it worked out fine, but that's not why I'm calling, Jason. Listen, I need to put 200 on the Cardinals.
Ooh, ominous music.
Booth, no.
And I don't know. I would assume that this is just. I'm not even a guy who tries to guess what'll happen in anything I watch, really. I'm just not. I look to be in the moment, guys, even with Bones. But for some reason, very early on, I was like, this is going to end where you think he's done with gambling, but then he's gambling. And it totally does. And I don't know why I thought that, because
I
he
didn't. They
seem
fooled
really
me.
self-contained, but they just went on and on about it so much. And then they do.
And his choice to gamble
Yeah.
is on the Cardinals.
Is on the Cardinals, which,
Let's analyze that for a second.
yeah.
Number one. Okay, guess which Cardinals do you think it is? There's,
We
of course,
hope-
St. Louis baseball team,
We hope it is the Arizona
football team. Yeah,
That's so weird. Where are they supposed to live in the
Washington.
show?
Washington, D.C.
Okay, so it doesn't make sense location
No matter how you
no
do
matter what.
it's the Washington Cardinals, guys.
And yeah, betting on baseball you just wouldn't do in a one-game scenario unless you just really like flipping a coin and losing money.
Which, yeah, he might.
Yeah, so you hope it's football, but it's weird that it's the Cardinals because that's, mine and Spencer's favorite baseball team.
It could be them because it's like a generic team that everyone knows about. So maybe there's like, they don't know much about sports. Like,
Yeah.
So they're just like, I just haven't bet on the Cardinals.
They could have
I've heard
even
of them.
picked a name that appears in 2 sports for that reason.
Sure.
Like more people are likely to recognize this as a sports team.
I'll tell you what I think it is, and I don't have the facts. I could look this up, but I wonder if Boreanaz was born in Missouri or something, and that's just his favorite team. And he's like, I'm going to say this is my sport.
We'll have to look it up. I think he was born in Hunkville.
He certainly resides there.
I was thinking like the generic thing, kind of like how the Simpsons chose Springfield as their city because it's all over.
That does make sense.
So
Could be that,
I
yeah.
don't know. Yeah, it's a mystery that we'll have to solve.
We know,
Or forget about and never think about.
we know he doesn't mean the Louisville college teams because that's just
That's
Cardinal
actually what my first
singular,
thought was.
Okay.
which
Well,
is really weird.
we've really analyzed the shit out of this.
Too
and
much.
I'm proud of us.
We know he doesn't mean the Catholic Church.
He might. He's
He
Catholic.
put more than
remember?
200 on that.
He put God on that.
And David Boreanaz, born in Buffalo, New York.
Okay, not an accurate fact from my guess anyway.
Well, we have we're back to square one.
Well, this is it for Bones. We're done with it. Hopefully we never have to
We
talk
have
about
you
Bones
guys,
again.
We did it. We've boned.
But I guess we will still continue talking about it because I'll open the floor. I don't know everything about Bones, but I've watched an awful lot of Bones over the last couple of weeks. So are there any questions about the show, the series, anything that went on that you want to answer?
What did we just watch again? Oh, that's right. Yeah, Bones. No,
Yeah.
it's very forgettable. I don't want to talk about it anymore.
Super forgettable. We kind of along the way and even before, because our last episode, which was very long, but we had a great time. We did a lot of these questions kind of up front, which was a little different for us.
Mm-hmm.
But I do want to know kind of what I always would ask. How's the series end? Do you know? Like, how does this go
Bones.
down?
So many bones.
Only briefly. I know what happens. I don't know why it happens or what the killer is. Everyone's alive.
Is it the
Everything's fine.
Gormagon?
No, he's the Gormagon. Okay, I guess I didn't finish that. We revealed that Zach Addy is the Gormagon's assistant,
Mm-hmm.
and he's
Baby
evil
Gormagon,
because
Gormagon Jr.
of logic and all that bullshit. Well, after that happens, after Zach admits to it and Bones convinces him the fallacy of his logic, and he relents and says, "Okay, I fucked up." He reveals who the Gormagon is. All right, big deal. We spent a whole season chasing this guy, right? Well, we get a 1-minute scene montage of Booth and the FBI bursting into the guy's house, shooting him dead.
God, this is just like when you find out Rikishi ran over Stone Cold.
Not far off.
The trouble I'm having with the Gormagon is it reminds me. I cannot hear Van say that without wanting to laugh every time. All seriously, like, well, the Gormagon did this. It reminds me too much of the Stranger Things evil monster, which I know you haven't seen Stranger Things, Van, but it's called the Demigorgon. And it's in I forget if it's in like a lot of it after the first season, but it's this big monstrous creature with a maw, opens its mouth and it's got teeth in another dimension or something.
Not unlike a Sarlacc.
Okay. Well, isn't a Gorgon a like Greek mythology monster? Is that a
I wondered if
Medusa?
I even wondered if the
I
name
think so.
this name was some version of that. I
This
just wasn't
name
familiar with.
is from the old. Okay, so there's the Illuminati supposedly and all that stuff.
Oh, I know all about them.
Well, apparently the Gormagon were an old ancient secret society who were intent on destroying the other ancient secret society, such as the whatever I just said it
Hatfields and McCoys.
such as the Hatfields and McCoys.
The Illuminati.
The Templars.
or even the Templars. That comes up a lot too. So that's what it was taken from. And actually, the Gormagon, the killer, is named because he's part of that society. That's not his name or whatever.
His name's not like Dave Gormagon.
Not to my knowledge. Pat Gormagon. No, they name him that because of his ritualistic killings, because he kills them, adjusts the body into a certain old position pointing at the sky, steals bones, replaces bones in a metal skeleton.
This is exactly the sort of guy Dexter would wrap up in some plastic.
That's what also struck me. It's like, could be the ice truck killer season in Dexter.
Oh, it absolutely could.
It was his brother.
It also could be the one with Jimmy Smits.
Season 2.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't that where Dokes dies?
Fair.
Dokes.
Surprise, motherfucker. I'm dead.
Poor
Oh,
Dokes.
man. Yeah. Dokes, and he figured it out.
He did.
He always knew.
He might have gotten away with, figuring it out, except for Lila. Was that her name? Or Layla?
It's really too bad Dokes didn't just say, let's settle this in a bench press competition.
We know who would have won.
Although Michael C. Hall was rather big back then.
But no Dokes.
Not Dokes, though.
Okay, so the series, the way it ends, again, I don't know the full circumstances surrounding it, but I know the lab explodes. And that actually comes from season 1, Hart Hansen was talking to Boreanaz, and Boreanaz is like, wouldn't it be funny if my big old head made this place blow up? And so they kept that. So they made the thing blow up. That's what I know. But everyone else survives, with the exception, you'll like this, Brian, of Bones' dad sacrifices himself to save Bones.
So he gets to make good, though.
He does.
Yeah, I bet his face looks like it's already been exploded.
So I think he deserved it.
He had nothing to lose.
Yeah, that guy was a real dirtbag.
So really there's that. None of the other main characters die, much like Sweets or some of the others.
Yeah.
So that's the good news. I guess one intern also died, but I didn't see any.
It's almost like so little happened. The show could have just not happened at all.
Well, okay, so we kind of got that out of the way.
Yeah.
Let's finally get the final thoughts. We talked a little bit about what we think of the show. Brian, I guess I'll ask, is the show good?
No, it's horrible. So one of the things about Bones is it is on the pantheon of, we already talked about this with House, but with House and a much different show like Silk Stockings, where you can watch these. They're really watchable. You could probably watch 5 of them and have a fine enough time while you're also organizing your CDs or whatever.
I was going to say that was a very specific number that I feel like happened.
Well, I did watch 2 extras. And
the pony one.
The pony play one, yeah. There's something about a show that's that breezy and watchable that's not all bad. It's less cumbersome to deal with in some ways than other shows.
You don't have to think about it.
Yeah. That
not
said,
at all.
it doesn't have the panache of Silk Stockings.
Well, do you guys
or
think,
House.
Do you guys think Chris Lorenzo was less of a hothead than what's his name in the show?
Yeah.
Booth.
Oh, Booth is the hothead. Oh, yeah.
Because Chris Lorenzo was pretty bad, too. I mean, he had his moments.
His default mode was loud, whereas Booth's default mode is okay, whatever, and then he immediately gets to loud. So I think that gives a slight edge.
Chris Lorenzo was slightly more confused, I think.
That was the exact word I was going to use.
And he was also busy going from point A to point B a lot of the time.
And timing things.
Which was his superpower.
True, yeah.
But yeah, so this is a very low quality show in terms of the effort I think was put into it by the people making it. I think the cast is trying, but I think it's also a weaker cast.
It's not a good cast.
A lot of the shows we've watched. So it's a procedural that I can see why it rose above some of the CSI type things, because it does have a consistent cast and, it is easy to watch. But
they have character traits too, whereas from what I gather, they don't.
Shallow
they
ones,
are there.
Yes.
I am intrigued by the fact that they hit on Sweets. Having not seen that, maybe if they would have had a few more like him, it could have been a different experience. Maybe if they would have written a few more that hit correctly like he did, maybe it could have been a different show.
I think that's the problem when you play to the middle like this, is your characters just come out kind of not memorable.
And Sweets he was, again, a psychologist. His whole thing, his gimmick early on, his first gimmick was trying to analyze Boots and Bones and playing them against each other, and it was funny and all that. But his dynamic going forward was then the psychology of the killer. Bones sees the bones and figures out the murder weapon, but she also doesn't believe in motive. By the way, that pisses me off.
Wow, that is
because
bonkers.
That is obvious. But she's like, no, motive doesn't play anything.
She would not get along with Columbo.
Motive's the only reason anyone's ever died.
Yeah.
by another's hand.
So he would analyze it and be like, okay, well, your killer, clearly, this was a violent killing. He stabbed them, he crushed them. This is a rage killing. So you're looking at someone who was really mad at the person. That's something
he was
super
bored.
super simple and basic. But Bones would do that. She's like, that doesn't make sense. It does, you fucking idiot. So that's what kind of endeared Sweets to people as well. And he was goofy. He was fun. He showed a lighthearted side.
I like the actor
definitely
too.
a fleshed out character.
Sure. Yeah, see what they didn't do that more.
I just wish this is a show that if you made it 15% more tongue-in-cheek, I think that's the other thing is tonally it goes from whimsical and kind of light and goofy to gravely serious. And it is not a show equipped to handle anything gravely serious, even if I don't think the light parts are fun.
And that's interesting too, though, because you guys made a point how they didn't really even try to make it realistic. Yeah. So it's like they knew not to take themselves too seriously and yet did, and yet did too much of that.
I think it's because they do want that big... Okay, another show, which I admittedly have not seen any episodes of, that I think occupies partially the same demographic, just from members of my family. Like This Is Us. One of those types of shows that is, people watch it, it's on network TV, you could talk to your grandma about it.
It's sad,
kind of like a Bones type show where people identify with like those, I want to see these heart-wrenching moments where a slow acoustic guitar plays and characters love one another, but one of them almost dies. You know, and I think that there is an appeal in that to a lot of people that a lot of us, if we would, maybe we've seen more TV shows and movies because we're nerds, but we would rather our emotional scenes be more nuanced than that.
Right.
So I think that's why sometimes it comes across really heavy-handed when the show aims serious.
Like I said, I've watched at least 20 Extra Bones episodes, and Katie enjoys it, so it's something we would put on before we went to bed or whatever.
You bones.
We bones. We probably shouldn't be talking about that on air, am I right? The show for me is not terribly made, but also terribly made, and I personally gravitate to the things that make me go, this show fucking sucks. Every single time Emily Deschanel reads a line, I go, Jesus, why would they... how is this? And that kind of keeps drawing me in. But also, like I said, I watched the whole second season with the Gormagon because it was so stupid and batshit crazy. I was like, I have to find out what happens next.
That's what I'm saying. Give me more of that kind of stuff, and don't play sappy music over it. Just be wild with it, guys.
And that's what I appreciated of that. So I can easily watch more Bones episodes. I might already be at my breaking point. But we'll see.
For some reason, I thought you said, I might do this after we record.
Nope, not going to do that. So the show in general is, as you said, Brian, it's watchable, which I think is important in the grand scheme of things. But I like it for the reasons I just said, the weird, crazy shit like Gormagon. But it's not Silk Stockings like, because that's just poorly made, tongue-in-cheek, everything. This one takes itself a little too seriously. I don't know, it just occupies the right spot for me to be like, okay, this is fine, but also it's real stupid.
I wish we had one actor, every show like that, like this, a procedural. Once in a while, you'll get a guest star who's like a very seasoned actor who just chomps down all the scenery in the room. And I wish Bones had a cast member like that.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I wish for some reason, like Eric Roberts was on Bones.
Well, the next episode, the Guy Fieri one that I mentioned, Fieri, sorry,
Guy.
It's okay.
My bad, buddy. Long story short, that Guy Fieri character is a restaurant critic. He's doing his diners, dive-ins, and drives.
And
goes to the restaurants and talks about how great they are. Well,
the fourth season there now.
He goes to the restaurant that Bones and Booth are always at, and it's Royal Diner or something stupid like that. Gives him a bad review. So Frank,
what a dick.
Frank, the cook, the chef or whatever at the restaurant, is played by that actor who, he was in Dumb and Dumber as the guy who thinks Harry and Lloyd are crime villains, and he travels with him, and then they accidentally kill him with rat poison. He was the Gabagool guy on that Office episode, and that guy sure does chew the hell out of the scenery, and it was perfect. It was great to see. So they've had that. I'm trying to think other actors, but I've seen character guys or guys who've had roles in other shows show up, do a stupid thing, and then leave.
I'm glad to hear that, because I feel like stuff like that livens up a network show a lot, because they feel so milquetoast that when you get someone who's very skilled and who has some leeway, it can be fun.
Yeah, that's nice.
Oh, and a killer in one episode was the guy who played the leader of the white supremacists on Breaking Bad in that final season.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was, I was like, I know this guy. That's who it was.
Is that Michael Rooker?
Yeah, no. Michael Rooker wasn't in that, was he? When Breaking Bad?
Maybe he wasn't. For some
But
reason,
I mean, you're right there.
I mean, he'd fit in there.
This is right there with that guy. Yeah, so that does happen. So I don't have anything else about Bones. Are we good?
Yeah, we're good.
We're good. So let's hand it off to Brian because, Brian, you're going to introduce our next show.
I sure am, guys. And we say this sometimes, but we're going a little bit of a new direction this time around, but not entirely, because normally when we cover a certain type of show, a genre, I like to move on from that genre next, switch things up. And we sort of do, while this is a police show.
Cryptic. Oh, police show. Okay.
Yeah. So I'll just read you the synopsis of the show. It's something I came across yesterday after already having a show picked out, and I watched what is essentially the credit sequence of the show, and without doing anything else, decided it would be our show.
Okay.
Detective Alexander Holmes has no luck with his partners. They always end up in the hospital or in the morgue. But this won't happen to his brand new partner, Yo-Yo, who just so happens to be a sophisticated, indestructible android programmed to police.
What the fuck is this?
And this is the 1976 television show, which only got one season, Holmes and Yo-Yo.
What?
It is streaming for free on YouTube.
I would hope it's streaming for free.
I was going to say.
No one's going to pay for that except for us.
No. So, not all the episodes are there, but but most of them are. Our first episode will be from season 1, the only season of Holmes and Yo-Yo. It is episode 2, Funny Money. After Holmes unwittingly tries to pass a counterfeit $20 bill, officials throughout the police department discover their wallets are filled with bogus money.
Oh, no.
And then season 1, again, the only season that exists of Holmes and Yo-Yo, episode 5, Yo-Yo takes a bribe.
Yo-Yo.
Yo-Yo and Maxine go undercover as a pair of honeymooners at a resort hotel, but the computerized Yo-Yo isn't programmed to respond romantically, and Maxine is not aware he's a robot.
So this looks like a person. This is an actor pretending to be a robot.
From the footage I've seen, he is something of an actor and something of a person, yes.
Would we recognize any of the actors from this show?
No, we would not. Okay. And this show is almost 50 years old. So
yeah, it's true.
From the sequence I saw, I got to see some of what they do to make this man a robot. I found it visually striking. And I think we'll have a fun time with this one. And again, like I felt it time to go back in time. It's been a while since we have.
Yeah.
This is fascinating because we also haven't really covered a show that none of us have a fucking clue.
Yeah,
this is a show I had never heard of.
No.
Let alone seen.
I mean, it sure starts popping up the second you type in Holmes and.
Well, because usually, you know, I'm surprised it's not Watson that pops up.
I mean,
he has like a calculator on his shirt.
Yeah,
that's how he's a robot.
It's going to be amazing. You guys are going to be glad we did this.
What's interesting about that is that, I mean, obviously Watson, the IBM thing wasn't around then, but that Watson was a computer. It was an actual sort of like humanoid intelligence thing.
Basically
really?
So. I mean, that was like the idea, right?
Yeah, they remember the robot they put on Jeopardy like 25 years ago or something. That was Watson.
It sounds pretty cool.
I think it was IBM. They created like a human artificial intelligence. They're trying to sell it now, from what I hear. But anyway, that is a weird tie-in.
That's shocking. Someone tried to sell everything.
It's a weird tie-in. It's like Holmes and Watson.
Yeah,
and then somehow this android show,
Holmes and Yo-Yo.
Well, I found an advertisement I'd like to read.
Okay.
This is a newspaper advertisement because it's 1970, whatever, and that makes sense. If you're a fan of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, you'll love Yo-Yo.
I'm sold.
Special tonight only, brand new episode. It's one laugh-packed adventure after another with Yo-Yo the Robot Detective and his all-too-human partner, starring Richard B. Shull and John Schuck. Holmes and Yo-Yo, 8 p.m. 8:30, the presidential debate.
Yeah, it's gonna be quite something, and we see shows like this all the time now. Like the idea of like, and people still think they're really revolutionary. They're like, oh man, human with an android, and it's like, are you kidding me? Not only were we making shows about that 50 years ago, we already got around to making really bad ones.
I'm pretty psyched about this.
Yeah.
I'm excited, guys. So there you go, listeners. You have that to look forward to over the next couple of weeks. I want to thank everyone for tuning in and listening to us ramble on and on about Bones and talk about Booth being a piece of shit. And let's get some promotional stuff out of the way.
Yep.
I am available on Twitter at ManlyVanLee. Spencer, I believe you're there too. What's your handle?
I am. I'm at the number 3, French_hen.
Let's shift to my right and say, Brian Vaughn, what is your handle?
At Big Time Gormagon.
And you could, of course, find Brian Vaughn also at
Loud Guitar Brian.
Either one.
Big Time Gorgonon 69 420.
I was asked to drop that by Twitter.
Good for them. Well, you can also find our show at Bootu Boys. You can find BootuBoys.com, where we have a lot of written content on there as well. Patreon.com/Bootu Inc. If you really like what we do, you can support us monetarily and give us $2 a month or more, and you get all kinds of bonus content as a little bit of a prize. It's also baseball season. I don't know if anyone listening to this likes baseball, but if you do, Brian and I do a bunch of fantasy baseball podcasts. Check out The Nasty Cast, which it's not nasty. It's from Dynasty. It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
Check it out when we talk redraft leagues. We also have The Dynasty Baseball Show, which is about dynasty leagues.
And both
Dynasty
those shows
baseball.
also feature our friend Ron, who's a very muscular man.
To my knowledge, is not a robot either. He's not a Ron bot.
No, and if he is, he hasn't revealed it yet.
Nope. And of course, I also do a show called the Launch Angle Pod, which is about high stakes fantasy baseball. If you're out there listening to this and you've got a fuckload of money and you like throwing it at fantasy baseball leagues, throw it at us on Patreon instead. But listen to that show.
We're
as well.
talking the kind of fantasy baseball that you play in some guy's basement and they've got an eye in the sky.
Or several.
It's
at
high
that
stakes.
point.
Are you sure the Nasty Cast doesn't get a little nasty sometimes?
Oh, it gets a little nasty a lot of the times.
You said it wasn't nasty, and I just felt like that was misleading.
I mean, I like lying to people.
We
Spencer.
have opened the show talking about what Ron did in the bathroom.
More than
that
once.
has happened, multiple times, I think.
And we talked an awful lot about Australian baseball and how
that's
kangaroos and koalas and how nasty that is. Koalas have a lot of chlamydia, Spencer.
Oh,
Did you know
gross. I'll have to rethink my previous stance on kangaroos.
that? Well, I'm not going to fuck that koala this
I
time.
respected them, and now I don't. I would like to throw in, did you guys hear that Australia had the first, I don't know if they have a professional league, like a female player that made an appearance. She was a pitcher.
Baseball? Interesting.
Yeah, in Australia. Good job, Australia.
That's right. Great job, progressive Australia. And then kick out that fucking tennis player who won't get the vaccine. Fuck that guy.
Yeah, Novak Djokovic.
Piece of shit with
Where's he
silent
from?
consonants. Where's he from? All right, that's it. We're going to get out of here. Thanks once again for listening. We really appreciate it. Patreon.com/BooTubeInc. So, for Brian Vaughn and for Spencer Hendricks, I'm Van Lee. And have a bones kind of weekend. Midlife and Gold Digger sure as funk are sure as funk.
I love that.
I might stick with that.
Sure as funk.